is just know that you can grow a fall garden. Even if you're in a place that gets really cold really soon, there's something you can grow. And not only can you grow it, my assumption, which I have experience in growing in zone 6A, is you can actually have an extremely profitable garden. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a fantastic day. We are actually getting a little teeny weeny preview of fall, so I figured we would talk about fall planting today. And I want to give you some mistakes that you should avoid doing, and just to make your journey into your fall garden a lot easier. And we're going to go through and start putting some seeds in as well as we speak. While I'm thinking about it here, we've got a plethora of seeds here. I've got some green beans to replant, try and get a second crop on them, and then I'll tell you why soon. And then I got some Oregon pea pods, snow peas, and then I'm gonna try and do a second round of cucumber, see if I can't squeeze another one out before the end of the year. This is all part of it. And the first mistake that I would say is don't be scared to replant and start planting. If you've been following this channel for any amount of time recently, you know that I've been really working up and gearing up towards fall and testing new things out. And that's just part of the journey and figuring out what grows best for you in the time frame in your area. So you may be watching me somewhere in Montana, I don't know, but we grow differently, but we can still kind of use each other's cues and adjust as needed. So, you know, I'm planting a little bit of fall today, but I'm also still planting a little bit of summer. And most of that's just because I don't know a lot of stuff to grow in trellises during fall. So I'm gonna try and fill them up the best I can and get the most out of it. When it comes to direct sowing, we're gonna direct sow on all of these trellises right here. And I'm really just gonna focus on one. And I'm gonna put these Oregon pea pods down. And these tomatoes didn't do very well for me. That's fine, whatever, but don't be afraid to interplant. So interplanting is something that I do a lot, and it's funny, on the Backyard Gardens podcast, Batavia was confused for a long time because I always say I'm planting underneath something. And what I mean by that is I'm literally going underneath the plant itself and putting in a seed underneath it to let it grow. So I'll show you on this one what that means. So if we have our plant here, I'm just gonna go along next to it and plant on either side of it, going all the way down this trellis as if I was gonna plant normally. And that's gonna do a couple things. One, it adds protection to the seed as it comes up, especially in this hot sun. So it'll give it a little bit of shade when it comes up, and then it'll protect it from high winds or something like that. Cause you know, we're still in the stormy season, so we could easily get some storms, hurricanes, you name it. But one thing that we need to be clear about is you're not gonna grow tomatoes with the peas right next to each other for the whole season. I fully expect to pull these tomato plants out basically as soon as they start growing. I am at a little bit of a disadvantage here in my garden because my trellis is actually starting to shade it, but we're gonna take advantage of that and just use it to the best of our ability so we can protect it from the heat. And then once these get going and they start producing and all that, then we can cut them back as needed and make more space for stuff in the garden. So real quick before I move on from planting or direct sowing, we're gonna put more cucumbers underneath here just to try and maybe get a second crop. These are starting to look a little bit weak, so we're just gonna test it out and see if we can't do a second crop. And then as far as the green beans go over here, we are actually gonna plant underneath them more green beans, and I'm gonna show you why. So I've been struck down with this, I believe this is the mosaic virus this year, and we actually haven't gotten a lot of green beans, so I'm kind of upset about it. I'm not gonna cry on YouTube or anything about it, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna take action. And I've got some purple green beans, which I hate saying purple green beans, but you get what I'm saying. We'll plant those underneath. Now on the packet, it clearly says resistant and tolerant to mosaic virus. So I'm kind of doing this as a test to see if that in fact is true, because this virus has jumped from plant to plant throughout. So we're just kind of doing a little bit of test. But if you go along with what we were saying about interplanting and protecting the plants, then we have to talk about heat. So as you can see, we've definitely taken steps in this bed, and then we've started taking steps in this bed to mitigate heat for planting. So we're just trying to take steps slowly but surely. This is an easy setup to do. I've done a couple videos about it, but you got to take in mind the fact that it's hot this time of year. I mean, I'm in zone 8A in North Carolina, and right now today it's like 83 degrees, which is cool for us, but we easily, and we will be back up in the 90s next week. So we want to take advantage of this and make sure that we are mitigating the heat for when we do start planting, just like we did for our Brussels sprouts behind us, to give them a break from the heat and let them kind of start going. So you want to take advantage of this, and the ways to mitigate heat are going to be covering, mulching, and watering. Doing those things, keeping the roots cool, keeping the foliage cool, keeping the ground cool, and that'll help keep things from bolting and get them off to a better start. So it is kind of a pain to go through and build these things, and at first I thought it was unsightly, and then I started thinking that it was kind of cool looking because I feel like I'm actually trying to make a difference. I mean, what we're witnessing here and what I'm seeing is me changing the path of my past in the future. So I've learned from my mistakes, I've planted things and haven't given them enough time because I waited for the air to naturally cool down, when in fact I can take steps to cool it down. And then that's going to give everything a head start. It'll be more gentle on it when it grows. And then when it starts getting cool and you remove those shade cloths, then you're adding heat to it. So you're actually going to boost the growth because of the temperatures. So it kind of works out both ways. So whatever you do, don't forget the heat. It's super important. Definitely mitigate it, and don't think it's too hot to plant where you are. Generally speaking, now is about the time to get started. It's a bit of a war zone back here, but as you can see, this goes into the next thing, is don't wait to get started. So we've got seeds started here. I've got some mustard seeds started over there. I've got everything set up here to get going. So this is super important, because if you're starting seeds, don't wait to start the seeds. Start them. When you think you should start them, you should probably have already started them. It is getting to be a little bit late to start some seeds, but you can still go buy transplants and put them in your garden of some things. And if they're available in the store, generally speaking, it's getting into the right time for you to plant in your garden for fall. So as things start dying off and moving on and you start creating space in your garden, you can start adding in plants for fall and really get a jump start, because there's a couple things that are going on here. And notice I'm standing in complete shade and it's later than it usually is. So that's a big issue. And that brings us into the next tip, which is make sure that you take into account the angle of the sun. It gets lower. So if you have a data harvest of, let's say 60 days, you need to add about 2 weeks to it, because the sun is getting lower. It's the opposite of spring, where each day the sun's getting higher. So now that the sun's getting lower, we need to add on days, because sun is what feeds the plants. And I do realize that these shade cloths are going to hinder the amount of sun, but the heat will also kill them. I put this swing in my backyard, and I figured I might not want to swing while you guys are on video. I don't want to make you guys seasick or anything. But yeah, making sure that you take the sun into account. Raise the date of harvest on your seed packets that you see by about 2 weeks, and you should start getting into the right time frame. And then you need to know your weather. So know when your last frost date is, and know the patterns after your last frost date, or your first frost date, excuse me. So for us in zone 8A in North Carolina, our first frost date comes in the end of October, about said August, but at the same time, it doesn't stay cold. So we know that, and we can take advantage of that, and we can start taking other measures to protect and extend growth times on some plants if needed. So that's something that you can do as well to kind of move forward in the right direction and keep your garden producer longer. Another thing I forgot to add in there is make sure you have a good plan. If you don't have a plan for a fall garden, take 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes one night when you're sitting on your couch watching Netflix or whatever, or you've just gotten back from the movies and you're, whatever you're doing, and try and make a plan. Decide what you want to grow. Just look at the harvest dates and plant in order. So we do videos every month about what we're going to plant at the beginning of the month, and I plan to continue doing that in the foreseeable future, not stopping after 1 year, because it will change. But this will help you to decide what plants need to go in the ground first. For example, These Brussels sprouts, which are notoriously slow to grow, we had to plant way early. So we planted those a month before anything else. And then the cabbages, which are gonna go over here, they take a little bit longer. So we're gonna put those in next, probably next week. And then after we harvest our sweet potatoes, here's a better view, we are going to put in our broccoli. So these are the 3 longer crop times of stuff that we're going to grow. Now we're going to do carrots and stuff like that as well, but these will take longer, and we'll put them in, we'll create shade over this garden and get it going off to a good start. But one of the biggest things and most important, especially if you're coming from a summer garden right into a fall garden, so just like I've been doing in the other videos, and if you haven't seen, when this comes up, when I pull these sweet potatoes and I harvest them, I will come in that exact same day and I will amend the bed, fertilize it, get it right, and get it covered until I'm ready to plant. So you've got to replenish your soil. You've got to get it going. It can be compost, it can be fertilizer, it can be more mulch, it can be topsoil, it can be all kinds of things, but you have to remember, these plants have been growing for a long time and they've been sucking the nutrients out of it. They're like leeches. And so we want to replace it. And if we do it ahead of time, especially if you're using organic fertilizers, when you get that next plant in the ground, those nutrients will already be available to your plants and help you to get them growing faster, sooner, and really get that growth pumping to them before the sun angle goes down. 2 more for you, promise. So this bed right here is our husk tomato bed. You can see that it's overgrown, so we definitely want to come and weed it. But what we're starting to notice are these 2 plants here are dramatically slowing down. So they're really starting to slow down. They're suffering from the heat. They're not producing as much. Now there's a couple things we can do. One, we can feed this garden and try and boost it back up and see if that'll help, and we may end up doing that. But 2, what we need to do, and this is a really hard thing to do, is pull those plants and get it replanted. So there is a very short window from summer to fall to really make sure that you're going to get a harvest, especially if you're in a cold environment where you just get cold and you stay cold. You really want to be on top of this. We get a little bit of a grace period here, which is nice, but this will work out really good. So if you have a plant that's sick, it's struggling, it's not producing, and you've waited, let's just say a week or 2 to see if anything turns around and it doesn't, go ahead and pull it up, bite the bullet, and then replant. It's really gonna be that simple. And there's a lot of things you can do to help with that. So you can get a bedding plant, you can find a seeded direct sow, you can do a lot of things, but that's gonna keep your garden producing a little bit longer, and it can ensure that you're gonna get a fall harvest from something, and at least you're making a step in the right direction instead of watching a plant just decline in your garden and just go to hell. Nobody wants to watch that, right? A slow, miserable death. Now I gotta say, I'm really enjoying this swing. It's not even mine, it's my wife's, but it's working out pretty good. So one other thing you can do is just know that you can grow a fall garden. Even if you're in a place that gets really cold really soon, there's something you can grow. And not only can you grow it, my assumption, which I have experience in growing in zone 6A, is you can actually have an extremely profitable garden. And when I say profitable, I mean you get the biggest bang for your buck out of your garden, out of your harvest. So you can get multiple heads of lettuce, where I can only grow in this 4x8 bed. I have 4 tomato plants right now, which is kind of pushing it in one row. In that same row, I can do like 60 heads of lettuce. You know, I can do over 200 carrots in that bed. I mean, there are so many things you can do and plant to grow. And if you're in a cooler environment, you can probably grow a lot more than you thought. So just to think, whatever you grew in spring, you're gonna turn around and you're gonna do again in fall. And there's things that you can direct sow. There are things that you can put in containers. And there are things that maybe at this time you want to just buy some transplants and test them out. Transplants are the best way to figure out if you want to grow a plant in the future. Yes, you don't get the biggest bang for your buck, but the hard work's already done for you, and you're planting it and you're trying it out and you're getting it growing to see if you like the way it grows, the pest pressure, how it tastes, what you can do with an excess harvest, how you can preserve it. All these things can come into play. And so just remember, there are so many things you can do. So here in Zone 8A in North Carolina, I said it 3 times now, I hope you don't forget, we plant something almost year round in our garden. And now that we have the greenhouse, we are planting something every month of the year, and we're starting a seed every month of the year, no matter what, more than likely. There may be a month where we take off, but there's always going to be something going on. And that's because I've done this trial and error over time. I've learned what it takes and how much that you need to put into it and what the failure rate is for the most part. There's always going to be an outlier, but you can definitely have an amazing fall garden, and you can definitely have a profitable fall garden. Even if you start now and you think you're a little bit behind, you can still do it. Personally excited to start this fall garden journey right now and show you how this garden changes over the next few months into the fall and winter season. And hopefully I get my harvesting schedule down right, and then we can end up having more to grow and more harvest at the correct times. But this is just all practice. Practice makes perfect every single time. And actually, I like to say practice makes less errors over time.